Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially healthcare. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
He's at war with woke.
Joe Concha
thinks liberals are a joke.
Joe Concha.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Thursday night, baby. Thank you for joining us here on the Joe Concha Show. I want to show you let's get right out of the gate quickly, like Secretariat. Actually, Secretariat always broke late. I can't say Seabiscuit either because he always captured his prey down the stretch. Regardless, let's just get out of the gate, all right, and listen to this sheriff in North Carolina. He's anti-ICE, and here he is, not on Capitol Hill, but in a North Carolinian Senate meeting, all right, state Senate meeting. And he's asked, what branch of government do you represent? Now, as a sheriff, I would think that you probably know the answer to this question. Nope, not even close. And this is the thing. You want to be anti-ICE, at least know what your position is in government in general as a law enforcement officer. Regardless, this kicks off our show. Cut number 3, go.
What branch of government do you operate under, Sheriff?
Constitution of the United States.
Are you aware of how many branches of government there are?
No.
For the sake of debate, I will move on and say there are 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial. Of those 3, which do you believe you fall under?
I believe I fall under the last one.
Would you say it to me?
Judicial.
Okay. You are incorrect, sir.
I mean, this ain't hard. Judicial, you're not a judge. You're an executive enforcing the... I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I'm pretty sure that I would know the answer to that question. And didn't even know there were 3 branches of government. If you don't know all 3, I bet that, 50% of my listeners, because you're very smart, but 50% do not know the 3 branches of government. But this guy, being a sheriff who is taking this big anti-ICE stance, would know that. Of course not. He does not. Meanwhile, you want to talk about preying on the stupid. Here is Lauren Underwood. She is a Democrat congresswoman who is now saying that 69 million women are being purged from voter rolls because of the potential of the SAVE Act, which basically says show ID when you vote. But she is saying that nearly 70 million people, that's more than many European countries, won't be able to vote because I guess if they change their name when they got married, they won't be able to prove who they are, which is the most ridiculous, stupid argument you can possibly hear, because almost every married person you speak to will tell you, almost every married woman that you speak to will say that it's quite easy to do that with about, 30 minutes of effort. Nevertheless, cut number 1, go.
If y'all got married and changed your name, your birth certificate would not match your current name. Nearly 69 million women in America have a birth certificate that does not match their current name. And therefore, 69 million American women would no longer be eligible to vote.
Oh my God. So if you got married and you changed your name and then you went to change your ID, I guess, to match your name, it isn't hard to go to your local DMV or wherever and say, I got married. Here's who I married. Here's the marriage certificate or whatever it does you need to prove that, which is quite easy. You're done. That's it. That's the way they're going here. At first, it was blacks won't be able to vote because they don't know how to get an ID, which then almost every black person out there on videos we have played on this show have said, actually, it's quite easy. Wesley Hunt down in Texas, congressman, has 6 IDs. And then even in East Harlem, we played a video where every single black person that they talked to said that, yeah, I have ID. Of course I have ID. It's not hard to get. So they switched from that because that was ridiculous. Now it's women will be able to vote if they get married. And there are enough people out there, at least on the left, the wine moms, who say that ICE is evil and should not exist. And they go out there and whistle their whistles and honk their horns and drive into ICE officers. They'll believe this because, again, they're like seagulls at the beach. Feed them anything and they will gobble it up. Meanwhile, Keith Ellison, who is he? He is the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, which, God bless California. I thought that was the worst run state in the country. Very close second to New York, New Jersey, currently Virginia. But boy, Minnesota is a hot mess of a dumpster fire. And Keith Ellison, now to Bernie Moreno, Senator, Ohio, actually tries to defend illegal immigration. Moreno asked him a great question around home invasions, and this is the way Ellison responded and backs himself into what we call a rhetorical corner. This is cut number 8. Go.
Another big shot lawyer like you. Just a quick question. If you enter the country illegally or you overstay a visa, should you be deported?
My simple answer is, sir, it depends.
Okay. So if somebody breaks into your home, should they be arrested for breaking and entering, or does it depend?
Yep.
It's an entirely different scenario.
How's that?
Because immigration is essentially a civil, and the breaking into my home is a criminal matter.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Gotcha. So if there's laws that should be enforced, so we shouldn't enforce civil violations?
We absolutely should enforce them.
But you just said that it's a civil matter, so it's different. So if somebody
you enforce civil matters.
So if somebody commits a civil infraction, it shouldn't be enforced?
It should be.
So make up your mind, pal. Oh, man. Look, if you break into the country, you are breaking the law. You cross the border without the proper paperwork, like legal immigrants. You are an illegal immigrant. Therefore, you've done something illegal. Just like if somebody broke into my home, your home, to Bernie Moreno's point, that also is the same thing. And Ellison could answer that question saying, well, it's a civil matter as opposed to a criminal matter. No, both are criminal. Therefore, it's against the law. Perfect questioning by Moreno. Great job. A+. Anyway. Oh, this show writes itself sometimes, doesn't it? And here we have New Jersey. Oh, congratulations. My state, where I currently sit as I speak. Mikey Sherrill, who is a girl, despite having the name Mikey. Never quite got that, but that's a thing now, right? I mean, my daughter's name is Cameron, and she complains to me. She says, hey, why'd you name me Cameron? It's a boy's name. I'm like, what are you talking about? Cameron Diaz. There's something about Mary, right? I mean, I could name 1,000. Mask. Awesome. The Mask, excuse me. Vanilla Sky. Excellent. And I went down the line. Cameron Diaz, kind of a crush of mine, in the 90s. So I'm like, hey, my daughter looks 90% as good as Cameron Diaz. I got major money coming my way from modeling and acting and so on. I didn't think that way. I actually think it's a very nice Irish name. And when you have the name Concha, Cameron, therefore alliteration. The wife liked it. Boom, we went with Cameron. But now she complains. She's like, everybody in my grade named Cameron is a boy. Sorry about that. Mikey, I never knew Mikey was a girl name. Like Cameron, I get, right? Ryan, I've heard. That's kind of a androgynous name as well, to use an SAT word. Mikey Sherrill, New Jersey. She's our new governor somehow. Now she wants to ban ICE from operating basically anywhere in the state because she is Tim Walz with hair. Congratulations, Garden State. This is your new governor. Cut number 22 and go.
First, I'm signing an executive order to ban ICE from launching actions from any state property. That means no ICE staging areas, no processing locations, no operating bases, no federal civil immigration actions run from any state grounds, not our parks, not our roadways, not our buildings.
That's great. I can't believe we have sitting governors in this country, Walz, Hochul, Sherrill, Spanberger, sitting there, Newsom, against removing violent criminals who entered the country illegally from the country, to the point where they actually want to set up these these portals to report on where ICE is operating. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, once again, but isn't that illegal? Where you have federal law enforcement trying to conduct arrests of people, trying to conduct operations that remove violent people from your community, and yet we have governors who are saying, you know what, we're going to find a way through technology to make sure that those who are here illegally, and if you're a criminal, we're going to let them know that federal law enforcement is coming and help them get out of there. This sounds illegal to me. I don't know, but here we are. Cut number 25. Mikey Sherrill is now officially gone full Walz, which is like going full retard, if I could quote Tropic Thunder, a movie from 2008. Regardless, not my term. It's from the movie. Cut number 25. Go.
The Attorney General's office is launching an online portal where people can upload videos of any interaction they see with ICE in our state. To be clear, we are not asking anyone to jump in harm's way or create an unsafe situation for themselves or for agents.
No, Governor, you are begging people to jump in harm's way. You want people like that guy Preddy in Pennsylvania, Alex Preddy, who came armed on several occasions with a 9mm semi-automatic, didn't tell law enforcement, decided to go in and start attacking federal enforcement vehicles, kicked in a taillight, knocking it off, middle fingers to the guy, screaming at officers when they're trying to conduct, again, arrests of bad people. You are begging for a confrontation. Did he deserve to die? No. Did he bring it on himself? Yes. Absolutely. 1,000%. And Renee Good, Nicole Good, same thing. The nurse who was trying to get home after dropping her child off from school. No, she wasn't. She was part of an organized activist group who blocked traffic, honked her horn for 3 minutes, dancing on the horn, all happy about this. And then when she was told to get out of her car, of her vehicle, in this case, an SUV, she didn't do it, and then took off and hit an ICE officer. Not cleanly, but I'm sorry. If you've ever been remotely somewhat hit by a car, and you've already been dragged by a car like that ICE officer, well, I'm sorry. All bets are off. And that's what we saw there. And that's what Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey is begging for. A confrontation that, hey, we ask you to stop ICE, but don't go too far. And hey, if something happens to you, hey, we have another political pawn to work with. What an absolute joke. I can't believe it. I can believe it, actually. We had Phil Murphy for 8 years. Now we have Mikey Sherrill probably for another 8 years, because people in this state, most of them are common sense, but outside the cities where they're programmed to vote Democrat over and over again, this is what we have to deal with in the Garden State and in New York, Minnesota, you name it. This is what we have to deal with. Fortunately, the rest of the country seems sane, so I guess we'll see what happens in 2026 and 2028. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with David Bozell of the Media Research Center. The guy is awesome. The guy knows his stuff better than media. But he knows more about media than I do. We'll put it that way. You want to stick around for this? Please do stick around. Back with more in just a minute.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ employ our neighbors, and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Welcome back, everybody. So, I got this thing, and I'm sure many of you out there as well have this thing about constantly evoking the Holocaust and concentration camps with modern day America in 2026. You lost the argument the minute you have to go down that hyperbolic, unhinged, quite frankly, insulting route. I wrote a paper back in college on the Holocaust, and it always stuck with me because I think a lot of people, when you hear about the Holocaust and you hear about 6 million people, Jews, being exterminated, you think that, all right, they were arrested, so to speak, kidnapped, like taken from their homes, put on trains, sent to places like Auschwitz, and then exterminated immediately. No. Read about this if you have not. These people were worked to the bone. And when they couldn't work anymore in terms of producing items, basically war material for the Germans, then they were exterminated. So imagine this. You're basically starved. You are beaten. You know what your fate's going to be, and it doesn't matter. And then once you don't have enough weight or enough energy to work anymore, then they kill you. And you know your family is in the same place. All that said, these effing morons that evoke concentration camps when talking about, in this case, an Irish guy who was here illegally, who committed a crime, somehow, because he's in a concentration camp, but yet has a phone to do an interview. I'm pretty sure that, back in the day, the Nazis wouldn't allow Jews to have phones to do interviews from concentration camps. This guy does an interview and talks about how he's in a concentration camp and how horrible his conditions are, again, for being here illegally. This is cut number 11. Go.
The best way I could describe it is probably like a modern day concentration camp.
Screw you.
It's a bunch of temporary tents.
Oh, no.
I've been locked in the same room now for 4.5 months. I've had barely any outside time, no fresh air, no sunshine. I could probably count on both hands the amount of times I've been outside.
Yeah, that's not Auschwitz, pal. All right, you're in a tent. You have your phone. I'm sorry you haven't gotten the fresh air that you wanted, but maybe not enter the country illegally next time. I'm not saying that that's completely and totally justified in terms of being in an ICE facility for 4.5 months, but there's got to be a good reason why you were detained in the first place. But again, do not evoke concentration camp when describing your particular condition. Meanwhile, ICE Director Todd Lyons, you have to understand what this person's going through. And he's testifying before Congress this week, and Democrats treating him with the respect of a doormat. Here he is talking about what he has to go through. Not just like Todd Lyons just isn't some sort of robot that runs ICE. This is a guy with a wife, with a family, and this is what's happening to him. Something you never hear in modern media, legacy media right now, as far as the plight of ICE officers and particularly the ICE director and what he has to worry about every night. The guy probably can't sleep, and who can blame him after you hear this? Cut number 10, go.
That's the stuff that ICE, yesterday after the testimony on Tuesday, I went back to numerous death threats against my family. There was a videotape of my wife walking to work that people actively post. The cartels have actually posted the schematics to my home. ICE agents feel that every day.
Yeah. Schematics to the home. His wife is trying to walk to work, is being videotaped, and then these far left liberals are putting it up on social media as if she deserves it, as if Todd Lyons deserves to be executed, and the rest of his family. Schematics to his home. You don't hear much about that in the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MS Now. anywhere, right? Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Joe Concha Show. Back with so much more in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
All right, let's bring in our VIP guest. He is Media Research Center President David Bozell, and he has had quite the week. He has been laying out how Apple News, along with Google News, Yahoo News, MSN News, basically that's the big four of news aggregation meaning that they take stories and they push it out to the public, and they have more control over what you see than you know, believe me, by a country mile. And now obviously playing an outside role in shaping how Americans consume their headlines. David, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mr. Concha. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I have to ask about your dad first. Obviously, the ambassador now, U.S. ambassador to South Africa. I understand he's slightly delayed due to an illness, not maybe a serious one per se, but getting by it. But apparently, dogs always come first in the situation. Tell us exactly what's going on in South Africa and Johannesburg. Who's there and who's not?
Well, apparently, even if you are an ambassador, Joe, you have to get if you want to bring your dog to the country that you're the ambassador of, you've got to go through a battery of tests, and you've got to do it within a certain 30-day window in order for him to get the dog into the country. Well, my parents were supposed to leave last weekend to head over to South Africa. The ambassador, my father, fell ill, just, run-of-the-mill sort of winter cold. It's been like Hoth here, Star Wars, just like everywhere else in the country. Had a winter cold, better part of hour. Doctor said, give it a week and then go. But they had to decide what to do with the darn dog. And because they were going to be outside this window if they waited any longer. So in the irony of ironies, because they didn't think they were going to even get the dog in there, they had to send the dog the next day. And now my parents' dog, Cosmo, the Springer Spaniel, is now ambassador dog, running your foreign policy affairs and State Department activities, representing the United States well in South Africa. He has the embassy all to himself.
Wow. People, have the fake laugh, and you've watched enough broadcast news or radio and everything. That was real. Ambassador dog. I mean, that is awesome. And it's true. Yeah. And Cosmo, which obviously was Cosmo Kramer, that was his name that wasn't revealed till the final season of Seinfeld. So that is huge. But, oh, man, I get it completely. And David, I don't know if you have dogs, but I have two. And when we go away, like when I go away with the Media Research Center for cruises to Italy and Croatia or to the Bahamas or Norway, like we did last year, the dogs have to go somewhere. You can't just leave them in the house like cats and, they'll survive. It's very expensive. It's $50 a night per dog. And if you add it up over 10 nights, well, that's not cheap. So, I understand why your dad had to get him somewhere.
Try getting him a plane ticket in one of the longest flights in the world, Dulles Airport, Washington, to Johannesburg, South Africa. So, but he survived. He did well. We got the photos to prove it. We got the videos to prove it. He is marking his territory in the outer rims of the residence of the ambassador of South Africa. So he's doing well. So they're excited about getting over there, and they'll be over there, I think, this weekend.
Sure. No, your dad always had the best joke with me, which is the reason why my head is still on my body is because I haven't been sent to South Africa yet to be the ambassador. In other words, if he's just waiting for the beheading, but no, I have a feeling that it's a mess over there, certainly. And that's such an honor that your dad was able to take on this job, which will be a heavy lift. And I hope to get an interview with him as far as not now, obviously. Let's go 3 or 4 months in and see what he is uncovering there. But I would imagine you'll be in touch with him every day. And it really is just, this is probably the toughest job of all the ambassadorships, I'll say.
Yeah, I think, that's, I hadn't thought about it that way, but perhaps, I mean, look, they've got saber rattling by the Chinese. You've got the ANC. You've got the Communist Party over there. The economic and the poverty levels are just off the charts. You've got the Kill the Boer movement. It's a mess. But the president wanted a bulldog in there, and there's nobody better than my dad to do that sort of thing. And see what's going on, get his boots on the ground, and represent America first very, very well. I'm sure of it. He's
absolutely
super excited.
And you weren't kidding, by the way. I just looked it up because I'm on radio, so I could go to Google without anybody seeing. Dulles to Johannesburg, 18 hours. I mean, I can't do, 3 to Florida. I get a little antsy. So 18, that's difficult. I would break that up if I were him. But nevertheless, I do want to talk about your new findings for the MRC Free Speech America Digital News Tracker. Tell us about that, as far as particularly Apple News, because on my phone, I'm constantly fed stuff on there, and I could feel the bias like coming through as if it's almost as if it's like MS Now or CNN feeding me my news. But the problem is, I understand it's biased, but a lot of people out there, they're getting this sort of news from a particular perspective from the left, don't know it, yet the big four, as you call them, as they're called, certainly this is something that needs more attention. That's why I wanted to have you on here tonight, David.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Look, this was late last summer after I had just taken over as president of media research. We were discussing as a team. I actually asked the team, I said, what's the number one rated news website in America by traffic? And we were kind of disappointed to find out it was the New York Times at 440 million hits a month. And then number 2 is CNN at 330 million hits a month. Now, CNN we raised our eyebrows. New York Times you could sort of excuse because of recipes, book reviews, crossword puzzles, Wordle, et cetera, et cetera. So, but even if you cut that in half, it's still too much for the New York Times. But CNN was odd, right? You get the believability rate of the media is in the high 20s. And so, you got over 80% of the country doesn't believe what they're getting from the media. CNN's ratings are now number 3, I saw just last week, behind MSNOW. So, or whatever they're calling themselves now. So, here's a situation where their ratings are in the toilet. Their trust and believability is in the toilet. So how are they the number 2 rated news website in America? But the one that really got us was what we call the curious case of Newsweek. In the month of November, when we started looking at this, we saw that Newsweek was the number 11th rated news website in America. Now, you cannot walk, ladies and gentlemen, in any direction, from any direction, and find anyone clamoring to read their Newsweek, that they got to have their Newsweek. It's not mentioned anywhere. I couldn't even tell you the last story Newsweek ever broke.
Yeah.
And yet there it sat as the number 11th website in America. Remember, it had sold for $1 not 10 years ago. $1.
That's right.
It was commercially bankrupt, editorially absent from all news gathering. So how is it that they're the number 11th rated news website in America? Well, we started doing some tracking, and we developed this digital news tracker. And as it turns out, they are the top website in America based solely on the aid that they get from Microsoft, MSN News, which is actually the number 4th rated website in America at 137 million people a month. And we started looking at the top 10. Who else is in the top 10 with MSN? Google at number 9, Yahoo at number 6, and Apple, if we're considered a website, if you just added the users of the app, would be number 7. So the four of the top 10 rated news gathering apparatuses in the United States right now are aggregators: Apple, Google, Yahoo, and MSN. So we developed this news tracker to see what they were pushing, how often they were pushing it, and the quality of the placement in which they were pushing it. So you're on Fox day in and day out. Yahoo posts a lot of Fox. Good for Yahoo, right? They put some balance out there. The average placement of a Fox story on Yahoo is 27th. In other words, you have to get through 26 stories to get to a Fox story at 27. Now, and what kind of stories from Fox are they putting out there? It's not hard. I mean, no disrespect to anybody at Fox doing any type of story, but it's soft news. It's the latest on Pat Mahomes' ankle injury. It's,
right.
Last picture of girl before she falls off cruise boat. It's not political narrative, right? It's not raw news. And that is what they reserve for the New York Times. It's what they reserve for the Washington Post. It's what they reserve for CNN. So we did those with all 4, and it turns out the worst of them is Apple. And they've given zero coverage, 0 links in the last 2 months. Tomorrow Friday will be the 100th day in a row in which they have failed to highlight a right-wing publication on Apple News.
That's amazing. And you're breaking news for almost everybody who's listening right now in New York and around the country, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. We're talking to David Bozell, the president of the Media Research Center. That's the thing. When you hear about the Washington Post letting go of 1/3 of its staff and CNN dropping to number 3, I think I saw from the MRC as well that since 2016, CNN's lost 70% of their audience, which they never really had a big audience to begin with. So that's certainly a lot. Yeah. So you say, all right, legacy media is dying. Like that's the thing that we hear over and over again. And Fox is number 1 in terms of obviously on the air, beating even broadcast networks at this point. But if the news is being aggregated outside of people watching live, then therefore we're still in a bubble while liberal content is still getting out to a huge majority of the people. I guess my question for you, David, is, given that perhaps you have the ear of the president or Brent Bozell has the ear of the president, is there a way to get to Congress and say, hey, this is not under FCC rules, I would think, or maybe it's not even FCC since it's online. I'm not even sure. I should know this stuff. Right. But how do you make it fair and balanced, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, well, so we put our research out there. We did a special report on Apple, celebrating basically whatever it was. This is last Monday, so it was like the 95th day in a row that they had failed to showcase a right-wing news outlet. And the New York Post called us and really put our methodology to the test, which was great. And it was really good on the Washington Post to put us through the grinder on that. And they were satisfied with the results of our methodology and the work that we did. They put out their own report. They contacted Apple for a response. Apple at first failed to respond or didn't want to respond. I don't know which. The story went out. Then Apple called New York Post and said, we'd like to put our statement in there. It got in there. The president shared the New York Post story overnight, Monday night. And then Tuesday afternoon, FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson wrote a letter to Tim Cook asking, is he violating user agreements? And I'm not a lawyer, but there's, look, Apple has a right editorially to do what it wants. But if they're presenting themselves as a neutral arbiter of the narrative of the day, they have a tough time sticking by that claim if not 100%, but if 80% of the news that they select is left wing, the rest would be center, and then there's no right wing news to choose from. They did 620 stories in the month of January, Joe. 440 of them were from left wing outlets.
Wow!
And so how are you gonna say that you're a neutral arbiter of these types of things? So there's some legalities that the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is going to be investigating. It's not a free speech thing, but there's other arenas. And look, we're tickled that policymakers are taking the research and want to put some disinfectant on these operations. Yeah. These guys reach more people than the broadcast evening news shows ever did at their peak.
Yep, country mile.
By a country mile, and so what we're trying to, the public that we really want to educate on this is, it's the nurse in the hospital who's not plugged into a Concha or a Scott Jennings or a Steve Deace or just the center right conservative ecosystem, and they're not on Blue Sky Brigade. They're not on that. Says we want the nurse in the hospital who's just headline scrolling to understand what she's getting. The housing contractor who's going from job to job to understand what he's scrolling. It's just left-wing narrative and legacy media narrative repackaged in a different way.
And just so everybody knows, the Media Research Center, the reason why NPR and PBS are not getting government funding anymore, primarily because of their research, which, by the way, it doesn't come from like right-wing, therefore we want to get rid of left-wing. It comes from objective sources and data that truly is grounded in fact and not fiction. And that is why, at this point, the Media Research Center is a major player and will be with this whole Apple situation, along with Newsweek. That's certainly for sure. David Bozell, president of the Media Research Center. Thanks for joining us, sir. And say hi to Cosmo.
Appreciate it. God bless. Thank you.
All right, easy, man. Take care. This is Joe Concha, the Joe Concha Show. Back with more in just a moment.
This This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Well, get ready for President Newsom. I know you're saying impossible, Conch, and I agree. I think if it's J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as a ticket in 2028, and the Trump economy is doing as well as it is, and the border stays closed, which it will be, and then in terms of foreign affairs, no wars, basically, and get that whole Ukraine-Russia thing solved, even better. But overall, if you have peace and prosperity, the party in power usually stays in power. You just think, okay, well, if Trump's not on the ballot, will people still come out for J.D. Vance? And I think they will. I think that J.D. is synonymous with Trump in terms of the MAGA movement. He is fully accepted by MAGA. And Marco Rubio is probably, in terms of a number 2 on a ticket, the best we will ever see. And I hope he's president one day. I've said that 1,000 times on here, but I am just blown away by Marco Rubio in terms of his ability to handle the media, handle Democrats, and do 9 different jobs, literally, with such precision. Anyway, I bring up Newsom because, well, like Tim Walz and his wife, well, Mrs. Newsom is not exactly someone that you would embrace as the first lady if you are on the right, the center, or basically sane. We'll put it that way. Here's cut number 21. And here is Mrs. Newsom, who may be the ultimate wine mom Karen, scolding the press on the questions they're asking her husband as if she's first lady already. This is cut number 21. Go.
No, we just find it incredulous that we have Planned Parenthood here, and women are 51% of the population. And the majority of the questions, all of these questions, have really been about other issues. So it's just fascinating. You have this incredible women's caucus and all these allies, and you're not asking about it. And this happens over and over and over and over again. You wonder why we have such a horrific war on women in this country, and that these guys are getting away with it, because you don't seem to care.
Oh, God. That may be your life, 2029 to 2023. Good luck, folks. I mean, talk about putting the C in condescension. That certainly is it for Mrs. Newsom. Anyway, congrats, meanwhile, to Portland. You allowed Antifa to destroy your city. No joke. I'm not talking about, all the protests and the violence and the attacks on police. We've seen that over and over again. But there is a residual effect, right, as far as the periphery of all of this. All right. As far as collateral damage to businesses that say, I do not want to be in Portland anymore. And there's a very good reason why. And you're going to hear this in this cut here, as far as what has happened to Portland from a business perspective, which means a lot when you need tax revenue. If you're far left, whether you're the governor of Oregon or whether you're the mayor of Portland, everybody's leaving like they are in Mrs. Newsom's California. This is cut number 6. Go.
K2 investigator Wright Gasaway here. We are continuing to track the decline in property values in the downtown real estate market. The drop is shocking. The top 20 office buildings had a combined market value of about $3 billion back in 2019. Today, those buildings are worth less than $990 million. It's a 67% drop. That drop in value is costing local governments millions of dollars in lost tax revenue. It's one reason we're seeing so many budget cuts. The worst part is we may not be at the bottom yet.
Nope, it's still going down. While Florida, Texas, Tennessee, South Carolina, Arizona, Idaho, they all benefit from this. All red states, by the way. So Bill Maher, again, every night on this show, if you listen, I play a Bill Maher clip. You know why? The guy makes sense. I don't care if he's liberal. I don't care about that stuff. I care about if you are common sense. And in this case, here he is talking about how Donald Trump appeals to young male voters because of the D word. And I don't mean debauchery. This is cut number 4. Go.
You can't change who we are. Yeah. There's just so much of this shaming. A lot of it, people wonder why so many young men vote for Trump. Well, maybe because You know, he's one guy who doesn't make you feel guilty just for being born with a dick. You know, it's true. It's a lot of his appeal. They make you feel, you know, a lot of, not me. I'm old enough to remember when it was the reverse, so I get the backlash.
What it was like to be born without
but if you're no, that I don't remember. But if you're 22 years old, if you're 22, you don't remember a time when it was the reverse. So you've only seen the backlash. You've only seen white men bad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. The word there was the nickname for Dick Nixon. FCC, I got around that. Boom. Anyway, thank you for joining tonight. Thank you to my producers. We're back tomorrow night, 9 p.m., WABC New York and around the country. Until then, 2 words for you. Bye-bye.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially healthcare. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.